The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask was initially released on April 27th, 2000 and came to the Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack on February 25th, 2022. I was very excited to get into this one as I loved revisiting Ocarina of Time recently. It also reminded me of a certain favourite game of mine. Don't worry, this isn't an Outer Wilds review in disguise, but we will be sticking to the same mantra we did with our Outer Wilds review. We'll be showing extremely limited footage of Majora's Mask, as putting all the pieces of the time loop together is as big a part of the game as the regular Zelda stuff is. We also have a lot of similar criticisms with this game as we did with Ocarina of Time, and as such, we won't be going into massive detail on these similar issues as we don't wish to waste your time. With all of that in mind, it's time to start the clock and take a look at Majora's Mask. How does it serve as a sequel to Ocarina of Time? Does it have its own identity? And is Majora's Mask worth your time? Majora's Mask is very similar to Ocarina of Time in the gameplay department, and that's to say, it's aged wonderfully and still feels fun to play. A lot of the gameplay feels like it's had a polished pass since Ocarina of Time. Movement feels better, and Link has some stylish new moves. You start with some extra combat abilities like the spin attack, and the camera behaves a little better. The first person camera is also less finicky with the joystick and allows for easier precise aiming. There are two major gameplay systems that are completely new. First up is the masks. Putting on a mask will give you a special ability related to the type of creature you become. The example we're showing is the Deku mask, which allows you to hop on water and use these flowers to launch yourself. Certain characters will only speak or do business with you if you are wearing a specific mask. It's a really cool system with plenty of depth. Next is the main draw of the game, the time loop. You have 3 days, or just under an hour of real time, to do everything you can before the moon comes crashing into Termina and sends you all the way back. Very few things stay the same when you go back, and you lose things like rupees unless you bank them. You do get to keep most major items you find, which is nice. Some care was taken to make sure you're not wasting the start of your time loop getting your gear back. We will give one piece of advice as it will be very helpful, especially for newer Zelda players. If you play the Song of Time backwards, the time loop will slow to 3 hours per loop. This gives you more than enough time to get everything you need to do done. I really like the new systems, and the layer of polish over Ocarina of Time's fantastic gameplay is really appreciated. The only gameplay niggles I have here are more related to commitments, and whilst we'll mention them here, we'll go into more detail in that later section where they're more relevant. First up, you can't save where you like. You either have to go back to the first day or find a specific set of statues to save at. Secondly, there can be a lot of waiting around in this game as certain events only occur at certain times. There is a song that lets you travel forward to set times, but you can still be left waiting around. Finally, my biggest issue with the gameplay is that it's very obtuse. In Ocarina of Time, puzzles were pretty straightforward to solve and felt satisfying. Majora's Mask runs into the Outer Wilds issue where puzzle pieces can be spread too thin, and putting them together doesn't make the most sense. Tattle isn't nearly as helpful as Navi at pointing you in the right direction. If you like freeform game design, then Majora's Mask is definitely for you, but there were plenty of times where I was just straight up lost, and if I'm considering looking at a guide, then I feel like the game is failing at providing direction. For an Outer Wilds comparison, the ship log always served to point me in the direction of the next piece of the puzzle, but never told me what to do when I got there. That's why I love it so much. Majora's Mask misses that first point, and as such, I think it is the weaker open form time loop game. Still, I need to reiterate that this gameplay has held up marvellously and is objectively better than Ocarina of Time when it comes to polish and feel. With that said, Z-targeting still sucks and the game can be extremely obtuse. Keeping everything in mind, we're giving Majora's Mask a 4 out of 5 for gameplay. As with Ocarina of Time, this art direction is magnificent and is somehow even better. Majora's Mask is much more grim and creepy than Ocarina of Time ever managed to be. The way events are visually conveyed is far more unsettling. Getting turned into a Deku scrub at the start of the game felt uneasy, and the Skull Kid's movements combined with some choice sound effects can really make the hair stand up. The Masked Salesman is just straight up creepy with the way he leers over you. Then we have the moon. This deserves special mention. Seeing it slowly get closer to Clock Town really lets the dread sink in. I also really like the choice to give the moon a face. It's not often that the abyss stares back. Each new music track has a great creepy undertone, and everything comes together to give the whole game this odd existential anxiety. I feel slightly uncomfortable in my own skin just being in this world. I'm really impressed. Ocarina of Time already had fantastic art direction duality between the past and future, but Majora's Mask fully commits to being unsettling, and it pushes that solid art direction further than Ocarina of Time ever could. Unfortunately, we can't go higher than a 5 out of 5, so that's what Majora's Mask will have to get, but know that this art direction is superior to Ocarina of Time. Majora's Mask is a far more intimate story than Ocarina of Time, which was a grand tale of good and evil. This is a more down-to-earth story in the broad sense. First off, Skull Kid is a far better villain than Ganondorf. Ganondorf felt like a villain you were just expected to hate. Skull Kid is immediately hateable. He steals Link's horse, turns him into a Deku Scub, laughs in your face about it, and then sets the moon on course to smash into the earth. Absolutely no faffing about. Skull Kid wants to see the world burn, and he's gonna make it happen. Secondly, the smaller scale narratives are also much more in depth. The time loop mechanic allows stories to progress in interesting ways. In Clocktown, you can see how characters react to the moon slowly getting closer. My favourite detail was how the guards stop to look up as the final day comes around. The whole game has this existential narrative undertone that is executed masterfully, and I was always left wanting to see what happened next, or how characters would react to the ever-present situation. I think that the narrative choices here are better than those seen in Ocarina of Time, and as such, Majora's Mask also gets a 5 out of 5. Specs are almost identical to those in our Ocarina of Time review. The only difference is that you're getting 2 save slots to play with instead of 3. You can still use suspend points through the emulator, and these are much more helpful here with Majora's Mask's weird saving system. Options consist of audio presets, Z-target toggle, and the brightness bar. Technical performance felt even better than Ocarina of Time. Link feels more snappy to control, and we encountered no bugs during our playthrough. Everything here is the same as it was in our Ocarina of Time review, and so is the score, 4 out of 5. This is the area that Majora's Mask suffers most in. We do think that it is the better game of the two N64 Zeldas, but there is a lot here that feels like it's disrespecting your time. First off, there can be a lot of waiting around in this game for things to happen. There are songs to mitigate this, but at the start of the game, I finished everything the game asked of me by morning of the second day, and had to wait around until the end of the third day to progress. Secondly, there is the weird save system. Reverting back to the first day saves your progress, as does using these statues, but the statues are few and far between and don't act as a permanent save point. It just feels needlessly convoluted when I think Ocarina of Time's save system would have worked fine. I also hate that you have to go through every character's introduction every single time you speak to them on a new loop. It makes sense thematically, but it feels like it's wasting my precious time, which it is. On the plus side, hard drive footprint is that sweet 599 megabytes. Again, you have to install the full emulator, you cannot pick and choose games, but the hard drive footprint is nice and small anyway, so it's not a massive issue. Overall, I'm not that impressed. Majora's Mask makes some decisions that really go against respecting your time. I can marvel at how well the gameplay, art direction, and narrative have held up after 2 decades, but there were plenty of times here where I just felt like I was waiting around for the game to happen. Overall, we're giving Majora's Mask a 3 out of 5 on our commitment scale. This is where our rating system gets interesting. We do think that overall, Majora's Mask is a better game than Ocarina of Time, but the lack of time respect from Majora's Mask makes the overall score lower. The overall art direction and narrative here, both big and small, is phenomenal, and the gameplay has a nice layer of polish over Ocarina of Time, but the game makes some odd decisions in how it treats your time. Overall, Majora's Mask absolutely is worth your time. It really is fantastically grim and is so different from all the other Zelda games. It's worth playing for just how different it is alone. If you go your whole life without having played Majora's Mask, then you truly will have met with a terrible fate.